right now because Vice President Kamala Harris is about to come before the cameras at her alma mater, Howard University in Washington, D.C., to concede her loss to former President Donald Trump. The Vice President, of course, hoped to give a different speech last night, but here she is today after learning that she has lost the election to the former president. She's at her alma mater in Washington, D.C., where so many supporters had gathered last night hoping that they would hear a much different speech from the Vice President. Today, delivering this speech.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. So let me say, and I love you back. And I love you back. So let me say, my heart is full today. My heart is full today, full of gratitude for the trust you have placed in me, full of love for our country, and full of resolve. The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for, but hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright. As long as we never give up, and as long as we keep fighting. To my beloved Doug and our family, I love you so very much. To President Biden and Dr. Biden, thank you for your faith and support. To Governor Walz and the Walz family, I know your service to our nation will continue. And to my extraordinary team, to the volunteers who gave so much of themselves, to the poll workers and the local election officials, I thank you all. Look, I am so proud of the race we ran and the way we ran it. Over the 107 days of this campaign, we have been intentional about building community and building coalitions, bringing people together from every walk of life and background, united by love of country, with enthusiasm and joy in our fight for America's future. And we did it with the knowledge that we all have so much more in common than what separates us. Now, I know folks are feeling and experiencing a range of emotions right now. I get it. But we must accept the results of this election. Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power. A fundamental principle of American democracy is that when we lose an election, we accept the results. That principle, as much as any other, distinguishes democracy from monarchy or tyranny. And anyone who seeks the public trust must honor it. At the same time, in our nation, we owe loyalty not to a president or a party, but to the Constitution of the United States. and loyalty to our conscience and to our God. My allegiance to all three is why I am here to say, while I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign. The fight for freedom, for opportunity, for fairness, and the dignity of all people. A fight for the ideals at the heart of our nation, the ideals that reflect America at our best. That is a fight I will never give up. I will never give up the fight for a future where Americans can pursue their dreams, ambitions, and aspirations, where the women of America have the freedom to make decisions about their own body and not have their government telling them what to do. We will never give up the fight to protect our schools and our streets from gun violence. And America, we will never give up the fight for our democracy, for the rule of law, for equal justice, and for the sacred idea that every one of us, no matter who we are or where we start out, has certain fundamental rights and freedoms that must be respected and upheld. And we will continue to wage this fight in the voting booth, in the courts, and in the public square. And we will also wage it in quieter ways, in how we live our lives, by treating one another with kindness and respect, by looking in the face of a stranger and seeing a neighbor, by always using our strength to lift people up, to fight for the dignity that all people deserve. The fight for our freedom will take hard work, but like I always say, we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work can be joyful work. And the fight for our country is always worth it. It is always worth it. To the young people who are watching, it is... To the young people who are watching, it is okay to feel sad and disappointed, but please know it's going to be okay. On the campaign, I would often say, when we fight, we win. But here's the thing. Sometimes the fight takes a while. That doesn't mean we won't win. That doesn't mean we won't win. The important thing is don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop trying to make the world a better place. You have power. You have power. And don't you ever listen when anyone tells you something is impossible because it has never been done before. You have the capacity to do extraordinary good in the world. And so to everyone who is watching, do not despair. This is not a time to throw up our hands. This is a time to roll up our sleeves. This is a time to organize, to mobilize, and to stay engaged for the sake of freedom and justice and the future that we all know we can build together. Look, many of you know I started out as a prosecutor, and throughout my career, I saw people at some of the worst times in their lives, people who had suffered great harm and great pain, and yet found within themselves the strength and the courage and the resolve to take the stand, to take a stand, to fight for justice, to fight for themselves, to fight for others. So let their courage be our inspiration. Let their determination be our charge. And I'll close with this. There's an adage an historian once called a law of history, true of every society across the ages. The adage is, only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. I know many people feel like we are entering a dark time, but for the benefit of us all, I hope that is not the case. But here's the thing, America, if it is, let us fill the sky with the light of a brilliant, brilliant billion of stars. The light of optimism, of faith, of truth, and service. And may that work guide us, even in the face of setbacks, toward the extraordinary promise of the United States of America. I thank you all. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. I thank you all.
Vice President Kamala Harris at Howard University, likely the most difficult speech of her career, saying, my heart is full of gratitude, full of love for our country, full of resolve. She said the outcome of the election is not what we fought for, but she said the light of America's promise will always burn bright as long as we never give up fighting. She talked about reaching out to President-elect Donald Trump today. She said we will help his team. We will engage in a peaceful transfer of power, to applause there in the crowd. She talked about her loyalty to the Constitution and her expectation that that same loyalty will be shared by the president-elect. And she added there, while I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign, the fight for freedom, for opportunity, for fairness, and for the dignity of all people. I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. She's right there in the crowd. She listened in on the speech. Mary Bruce, no question, a painful speech for the vice president to deliver. These are always difficult for whichever side loses.
Painful, David, bittersweet, but this was a chance for Kamala Harris to come out here and assure her supporters that the fight goes on. As you noted, she said that while she is conceding today, she does not concede the fight that fueled this campaign, the fight for freedom and for fairness. And she wanted to assure all of her supporters, and there are a lot of them here who are shocked, despaired, angry, many in tears. She wanted to assure them it's okay to be sad and disappointed, but saying to them, do not despair, saying don't throw up your hands, roll up your sleeves. And David, I think it is important to note that Kamala Harris here is doing something that Donald Trump still has not done. That is to concede and admit that she lost, and also to say that she will go ahead and go forward and participate in the peaceful transition of power. And that was a line here that got a lot of applause, I can say, David, even in the midst of what is a lot of shock for so many here today.
Mary Bruce right there at Howard University. Mary, thank you. Our chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl. This campaign for Kamala Harris was just 107 days. So many things about this campaign, really on both sides, extraordinary. The assassination attempts on Donald Trump, this extraordinary political comeback unlike anything we've ever seen. And on the vice president's side, to have a president at the top of the ticket perform in that debate like he did in June, decide that he was not going to seek re-election, and then suddenly support the vice president and say in 107 days, let's see what you can do here.
It's been a campaign for the history books, David. I have to say, I've seen so many speeches by presidential candidates winning, losing presidential candidates, candidates that never make it anywhere near this far. I think some of the best speeches that I have ever seen delivered have been concession speeches. I think of when Al Gore had to come out and address the country after the Supreme Court stopped the Florida recount, a race that ended really essentially in a tie, and had to address a very disappointed group of Democrats around the country and say, it's okay, I concede, I lost, I am now going to help George W. Bush in his transition. Or when John McCain came out and addressed supporters upset that Barack Obama had won. And he shushed the crowd when they started to boo his name and said, no, now we're going to support him. So I thought the most important line here, I mean, Mary hit the, we're going to continue to fight. That's very important to her supporters. But when she said, we must accept the results of this election, we will help his team in the transition. It's hard to imagine a more painful time to say that for Kamala Harris. She called him a tyrant, a petty tyrant, called him a fascist, and now is doing the right thing and saying the founding miracle of American democracy is we have a peaceful transition of power in the country. The loser wishes the winner well and helps them get started.
And in fact, when she said we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power, that was the largest applause from the crowd gathered at Howard University.
It was one of the best speeches of her campaign. I hate to say, I think that was a very powerful speech.
It was authentic.
Yes.
It was. And Lindsay Davis, not lost on us where she gave this speech. She was hoping to give a different one at Howard last night. This is her alma mater. She spoke of service there and also got a big reaction from the crowd. But no doubt, many young people in that crowd from that university community hoping that she would have made history.
And I was struck, David, by the close-up shots of the tears streaking the faces of the young people when she addressed them directly and said, it's going to be okay. I think that people needed to hear that from her in moving forward. And of course, it is at Howard University, the backdrop of all of this. She talked about in her memoir that she decided that she would go there because it was a good place to start off her career at the alma mater of Thurgood Marshall. And in 2017, just a year after she had become only the second elected black female U.S. senator in this country, she gave a commencement speech there. Much different speech from today. And yet, she talked about how, I know sometimes we're afraid of falling short. It's not that we don't know what we should do. It's not that the bar can sometimes feel too high. It takes so much time and effort to reach it, so much sweat and so many tears. And being human, we sometimes fall short, and that's okay. And I think that we heard a lot of that sentiment really today. Of course, as we've said, not the speech that she expected to give.
She had hoped to give. And she talked about that wonderful piece of writing that spoke of in the darkness, you see the most brilliant of stars. Just behind you there, Rick Klein is actually still standing after being here with us on the air until 5:30 in the morning when the race was called. And Rick, just bring us up to speed. Obviously, Donald Trump, the president-elect, well above the 270 electoral votes he needs. There's 2 states outstanding here as this stands, Rick, and he will win the popular vote as well, which is a different scenario than the last 2 times he ran.
That's right, David. This is the electoral map as it stands at this hour. And we spent so much time over the last days and weeks talking about the battleground map, the paths to 270. Donald Trump bulldozed through basically all of those paths. In the battlegrounds, we saw last night play out in a way where he took North Carolina and Georgia, securing the 2 southern states, took then the big prize of Pennsylvania, breaking the big wall, the blue wall, and then the clincher in Wisconsin. This afternoon, ABC News projects that Donald Trump will also win the state of Michigan. So all 3 states in the blue wall. Right now, he is up in the vote count in both Arizona and Nevada. Very possible that he wins all 7 battleground states. And he did it by turning red places a little bit redder, by turning purple places red, by turning blue cities just a shade more Republican. He got record numbers of Latino voters for a Republican candidate. And at the end of the night, a remarkable achievement. He is now almost 5 million votes ahead of Kamala Harris. He cracks 50%. He is going to get a majority of voters for the first time in any of his 3 runs for president, David.
And he heads to Washington now with a Republican Senate. They've taken back control of the Senate. The House still has not been projected by ABC News. So a lot of change in Washington, and the voters sending a very clear message with what we saw overnight here. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live, abcnews.com. I'll be back with the entire team for World News Tonight. For many of you here in the East, your early evening local